Hi, I'm Nicole Davenport, and this is Great in the Sack, When Misogyny Leads to Mayhem, a podcast that today will delve into a story that is pre-Roe v. Wade overturn, but post-Texas Senate Bill 8, also known as the Texas Heartbeat Act, by just a few days. The Texas Heartbeat Act was enacted on September 1st, 2021 to be exact. This is the story of Josseli Barnica, a tragedy that was caused by laws prioritizing religious beliefs over women's lives. Now, abortion law proponents brag that anti-abortion laws protect both the mother and the fetus, but when healthcare staff are terrified to act, nothing could be further from the truth. Before the headlines, before the tragedy that etched her name into our collective consciousness here in the recent months, there was a life, a vibrant tapestry woven with dreams and hopes and challenges, and above all else, love. This is the story of Josseli Barnica, defined not by her tragic end, no, but in hopes of telling her story by the journey of her life that led to her tragic end. Josseli Barnica was born in Honduras, a land of lush landscapes and resilient spirits. From an early age, she embodied the strength and the determination characteristic of her heritage. Family was her cornerstone, and she cherished the traditions and values passed down through generations. Seeking better opportunities and a brighter future, Josseli made the courageous decision to immigrate to the United States of America in search of that now kind of elusive American dream. Settling in Houston, Texas, she embraced the challenges of adapting to a new culture and a new environment. Her resilience shone through as she worked tirelessly to build a life for herself and for her loved ones. In Houston, Josseli's life blossomed with the birth of her daughter. She embraced motherhood with unwavering devotion, striving to provide her child with the love and the opportunities that she had always wished for herself. Her husband stood by her side, sharing in the joys and also in the challenges of building a family in a country that's different from the one you were raised in. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. 6 weeks, 42 days, 1,008 hours. Some women, especially those with irregular periods, don't even know they're pregnant until about 5 weeks or after. The world's shifted overnight, but no one even noticed, not outright anyway. The 6-week abortion ban of Texas, known as SB 8, would come to affect many. Misogyny is nothing new in Texas, but this really felt like an attack against women. Looking back, it was an ominous foreshadowing of the Roe v. Wade overturn to come. No one expected it. Not the nurses, not the doctors, and certainly not the patients. The healthcare workers had to begin sending desperate women home. But it's worse than that. This new law introduced fear and confusion into America's already broken healthcare system. As long as the fetus is over 6 weeks old and has a detectable heartbeat, it doesn't matter what has gone wrong with the pregnancy. There will be no abortions after 6 weeks, no matter what. Not only is the law vague and confusing at best, it's deadly at worst. When a woman has a miscarriage, the new normal is apparently to stall the process of helping the patient pass the soon stillborn fetus in preference of waiting and waiting. But how long do we wait? Till there's no longer a heartbeat. But what if till there's no longer a heartbeat? But how long till there's no longer a heartbeat? Now, as a nurse myself, I know what happens when the cervix is exposed for a long period of time. It becomes extremely vulnerable to bacteria and hence infection. Women often make pregnancy and childbirth, look ridiculously easy, but in reality, a number of issues can arise. And with the threat of legal action in the background, it's like the government has a gun to the back of all healthcare professionals. A familiar proverb that my dad used to say when he was teaching me to drive comes to mind. Hesitation kills. Now, the worst part about the ER, in my opinion, is the silence that follows. A decision made by a stranger in a suit for a woman. Not like the absence of noise. God knows an ER waiting room is never quiet. It's the kind of silence that hums like white noise just beneath the surface of affected patients. She first came into the ER. That's a part of HCA Healthcare in Houston, Texas, September 2nd, 2021. The day after this new Texas law, Senate Bill 8, was passed. The Heartbeat Act. Josseli Barnica. She had hopes, dreams, and moderate pain in her abdomen, most relevant to the staff tending to her. She was shaking, trembling, not visibly, but in the way her voice cracked as she pleaded for the healthcare staff's help. The waiting room of the ER was as crazy as a group of conservative men, allegedly, and her pale face stood out like a beacon in the sea of people soon to become patient, as though she was a saint. It began with a question that carried the weight of an accusation. How far along are you? 17 weeks was the answer to that question. Josseli's symptoms were categorized and filtered through a new additional lens, suspicion. While the bleeding, soon to come, the cramps were the most problematic right now. The new law, SB 8, was more problematic than anything at the moment. Josseli was sent home. It's almost as if the doctor refused to investigate anything further than the heartbeat. As soon as he heard the heartbeat, that was it. The heartbeat was literally the hill that Josseli would die on. You know, the sad part is that she wanted that baby so very much, and you could tell because of how she spoke about bringing her baby home to see her new sister, her new big sister. There seems to be a lot of confusion over what the term abortion means. Now, as a nurse, again, I know that the term abortion is a neutral word, but it has been made negative over time. An abortion just means to evacuate a baby or fetus from the birthing canal or uterus. Heck, even a C-section is technically an abortion. Giving birth is an abortion. So is when the baby has passed, but still needs to be removed. These negative connotations surrounding abortions causes doctors at HCA and other places, no doubt, to stall procedures until the law will allow them to act, when there is no longer a fetal heartbeat. The doctors ordered tests, but it was clear that they're walking a legal tightrope. The new law loomed over even the most basic of prenatal care. Not one of the doctors wanted to be the first to intervene too soon and risk breaking the law. Like sticking up for the kid getting bullied at school or something, except this was a hospital, the last place you would expect these type of legal repercussions. So, instead of answers, Josseli was sent home with a nearly whispered instruction. Follow up with your primary care doctor, especially, dear, if the pain persists. The pain did persist. It grew sharper, as did a new symptom, bleeding. It grew sharper and angrier, as did a new symptom, bleeding. So Josseli returned to the ER the following day. It was clear that something was wrong, very wrong. Tests were once again run, and this time, the answer was clear. Well, it should have been clear. Anyway, a miscarriage was, and I quote, in progress. something that requires pretty immediate care because all that pain, well, if it was me who took her prenatal vitamins, I would have been shocked if she was 9 centimeters dilated. The staff rushed to the doctors to tell them, and yet, even as they did that, action was still not immediate. The law demanded evidence before intervening. Conclusive, undeniable evidence. A doctor was overheard saying that it would be a crime to give Josseli an abortion at that point. It's ironic, isn't it? The very group of people who rely on faith and who have sculpted and implemented this Texas law believe that an intervention requires evidence. It's infuriating, right? Josseli could be heard on the phone to her aunt telling her how they wouldn't help her even though they knew she was miscarrying. The evidence they want? Silence. But that silence came at a price. It took 40 hours. Josseli waited. Her pain mounted, her body endured. She was also heard begging the doctors to help her, but the doctors only monitored. For one thing, the absence of the heartbeat, the fetal heartbeat. 40 hours is a long time. Long enough for fear to set in. Long enough for hope to dissolve into exhaustion. Long enough for Josseli to begin wondering if this is the new normal for women. Not just American women, but worldwide. Because violence against women is always on the rise. It's always coming back into style. 40 hours is so long. Long enough to leave Josseli susceptible, vulnerable to the dangers of bacteria to her dilated cervix. When the heartbeat ceased, the doctors finally took action. After the miscarriage care to empty Josseli's uterus was administered, for a moment there was relief. But that wouldn't last long because, as I said, 40 hours is a long time. Sepsis is a word unfamiliar to many. The Mayo Clinic defines sepsis as a serious condition in which the body responds improperly to an infection. The infection-fighting process turns on the body, causing organs to work improperly. Untreated, it is fatal. A few days after her second visit, Josseli returned to the hospital again. Apparently, she had called about the heavy bleeding she was still experiencing and was told that this was, quote, to be expected. The bleeding continued for the following 2 days to the point where Josseli knew she had to book it back to the hospital, back to the place where doctors refused her pleas for help until it suited the law. It must have been so difficult for her to make that third trip. This time, she was feverish, her pulse was racing, her heart trying desperately to catch up with her. Her abdomen was in excruciating pain and tender to touch. She looked absolutely exhausted, and she just kept bleeding and bleeding. The blood pooled up where it shouldn't. The damage was done. By the time Josseli's cervix was dilated at 9 centimeters for literally over 40 hours, but nobody seemed to realize that yet. By the time of this third visit, the waiting was finally over. Not because the health system did what it was supposed to do through specific guidelines surrounding the new abortion law and miscarriages. No, that's not why we're here, is it? The wait that was remarkably too long of time to wait to perform a procedure to remove the, quote, inevitable miscarriage, according to her chart, to save a woman's life because Josseli's body had reached its limit. Amidst the absence of whispered, panicked debates on what to do in this very new foreign normal of waiting for a patient's deteriorating health to secure justification for intervention, consulting the hospital's legal department instead of medical journals and encyclopedias, patients were left with nowhere to turn. 3 days after her second visit, Josseli Barnica passed away, leaving behind her husband and her 2-year-old daughter. Experts and doctors reviewed the 4 pages of medical notes about Josseli, saying that her death was absolutely preventable. Now, I feel it's important to talk about Texas and the law that was the predecessor of the current abortion ban, the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Texas Senate Bill 8 wasn't just some 6-week abortion ban. It was a blueprint for fear and fear-mongering alike. It turned neighbors into informants, doctors into offenders, and nurses into accomplices. Texas lawmakers didn't even have to impose the law. They relied on private individuals to file their civil suits against their own doctor because they felt that they could get that $10,000 if they won the civil case. This behavior is so predatory, and it should never have been accepted. The Republican Party told us they would never go after Roe versus Wade, but they did it anyway. This is what should have told us that. But I don't think we were listening yet. We thought the darkness had passed. The Trump administration was over. Now we know we were naive, and now we know it's time to fight. Ted Cruz has defended the ban, which he has labeled as reasonable. Donald Trump laughed it off during a speech and joked about ratings. When HCA was asked if they now provide clear guidelines concerning procedures surrounding miscarriages, there was no comment. Shareholders of HCA asked if patients could be better informed about what to be expected from the hospital under the new abortion ban surrounding miscarriages and pregnancy. But the request was denied. The laws, we are told, are meant to protect us, to provide structure, justice, and safety. But not all laws serve these ideals. Some laws weigh heavier than others, and the burden of the overturn of Roe versus Wade does not fall equally on all shoulders. It is a law written with sharp edges that cut deepest into the souls of those already struggling to stay afloat. For people of color, indigenous communities, those with special needs, and families living on the margins, the law is not merely restrictive, it's punitive. For people of color, the barriers to healthcare have never just been about access. They're about trust. Trust in systems that have historically overlooked, exploited, and abused them. Who could trust in a system that abuses them? Texas Senate Bill 8, and now the overturn of Roe v. Wade, amplifies this mistrust to a shocking degree. It silences options and pushes women, Black, Latina, and others further into the shadows of a healthcare system that was never designed for them. Texas Senate Bill 8, and now the overturn of Roe v. Wade, takes what little access women had and places it just beyond reach. I want to thank you for joining me for this important message about Josseli Barnica's life. In understanding her story, we gain insight into a broader narrative of how misogynistic politics and religious beliefs are dangerous and sometimes fatal to women. The goal of this episode is to honor Josseli's life and provide a meaningful way to tell these events. The goal of this episode is to honor Josseli's life and provide a meaningful way to tell the events that led to her untimely and tragic passing. If there are specific details or aspects that I missed, or you just have something to say, please let me know in the comments. You can find me on social media under Great in the Sack Podcast. This is Nicole Davenport, and thanks again for joining me in the Sack.